Hello, everybody. This is Lauren Kuby, council member, and I'm so glad you're joining us for the Connecting with Kuby event. We're hosting these events every month, a formal way to have conversation about whatever is on your mind, whatever's going on in the city of Tempe, what's going on in your neighborhoods. Today, we'd like to have a focus on our feral cat pilot program, and then hopefully there'll be time to discuss other issues as well. I'm sure there will be. So I wanted to introduce to you Kristen Gwynn, who's our policy aide or aide for Doreen Garland and myself. And she's been instrumental, that just understates it, in establishing our feral cat program. It's unlike any other program in the state of Arizona, maybe the country, maybe the world. But she's done an amazing job, and we've been able to cobble together funds from Jerry Brock, a very devoted philanthropist in Tempe, a business owner. But we've recently taken steps to expand our pilot program. And so Kristen's here to give you an overview of everything that we're doing and what we will be doing in the future. We'll take your questions and answers and give you answers and then move on to other topics. So with that, I'd introduce Kristen Gwynn, who has a master's in public administration, a master's in public policy. She has been such an incredible asset to the city in so many ways. And just as an overview, the city of Tempe has no place where animal welfare issues reside. We do have the animal control officer, Rich Fairclough, who is dedicated to protecting animals from abuse. But we don't have any official place where these topics can be chewed upon, so to speak. So we established a working group. I lead the working group with Randy Keating and and Jennifer Adams as the other council members in the working group. And so we've looked at anti-tethering laws. We passed that. We're looking at hoarding laws. We're doing a lot, we think, to promote animal welfare in the city of Tempe. With that, I give you Kristen Gwynn.
Thank you, Lauren. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here with us today. Let me go ahead and share a little presentation with you. Hopefully this will work. There we go. Okay. So we've had a lot of questions in the past few weeks about the city's new feral cat program, and Councilmember Kuby thought it might be helpful for me to be here today and share a little information about how we think it's going to work as we are still putting it together. So as we go along here, please feel free to utilize the Q&A feature within WebEx to type any questions that you have. I'm going to try to keep an eye on it as we go along here, and I think that Councilmember Kuby will as well. So we'll try to catch those questions as we go. If we miss any of them as we go along, then we'll definitely catch them at the end. So I will go ahead and get started, but I thought the best place to begin telling you where we're headed is to talk briefly about where we've been, except that it doesn't want to move forward. Cool. There we go. Okay, so as some of you may be aware, a little over a year ago, the City Council approved a small pilot program focused on cat colony management, using a donation, as Lauren said, from local businessman and philanthropist Jerry Brock. So thank you, Jerry. We put a survey out on the Tempe Forum and asked people some questions about cat issues in their neighborhoods and whether they were willing to participate in a program to try to make things better. By September of last year, we had selected 4 neighborhoods in Tempe based on their having the highest number of responses to the survey, and specifically the highest number of people willing to get involved in some way. So those neighborhoods were Pepperwood, Kiwanis, Brentwood Cavalier, and Tempe Gardens Superstition. By November, we developed a full curriculum around best practices for cat colony management, and we began holding community education meetings in each of the pilot neighborhoods. So they spent the winter starting to implement all of those best practices, and by early February, we were able to start scheduling TNR appointments and trapping cats. For those who don't know, TNR is trap, neuter, return, and it's the process by which we spay and neuter feral cats and keep the population from growing. And we'll talk a lot more about that as I go on. So we provided TNR for 27 cats in February and early March. And then all of the TNR clinics shut down due to COVID-19, and we were kind of put on hold for a while. Even once the clinics reopened, they had very limited capacity, and so it was next to impossible to get appointments in any sort of meaningful amount. So we kind of went our own way, and we scheduled 2 mobile TNR clinics in July and August, bringing the mobile surgical van to our city facilities and completing TNR for 43 cats in July and 41 cats in August, giving us a total of 111 in that original pilot. To be clear, that has not finished the work in those neighborhoods, but it has made a good sized dent. So we'll continue working to get the rest. So that's wrapped up the first stage of the pilot, even with some work still to do there. And now with another generous donation from Jerry Brock, we have $10,000 in funding for this year to take the program citywide in what I consider the second phase of the pilot. Okay, so some of you may be wondering why the city is trying to manage cats at all. Some people think we should just ignore them and let people take care of them or not as they choose to. Others would like us to round up all the cats and send them away somewhere so that we could apparently all live a cat-free life, I guess. But that's not really realistic, and this is a problem that's getting worse by the day. As you can see on the slide here, the best estimate is that there are about 100 million community cats in the world. That means outdoor unowned cats, and 50 million here in the US alone. They live in every city and every neighborhood in America, and our best estimate is that there are approximately 2,500 to 3,000 community cats here in Tempe, and that number continues to go up. And here are some reasons why. It's becoming more and more common for people to abandon pets, particularly cats, when they move. They just let them go. A lot of that gets blamed on our student population, and they certainly have done some of this, but people of all ages abandon their cats to an outdoor life and usually assume they'll be just fine, which is not always true. Add to that the low rates of spay and neuter among outdoor cats, even those with owners who love them. It's sometimes as low as 2% of those cats that are spayed and neutered, and you can see where this is going. An adult female cat can have 3 litters of kittens per year, and while the average litter size is about 3 to 5 kittens, they can have up to 10 at a time. So imagine a single female cat being capable of having up to 30 kittens every year, starting at about 6 months of age and continuing through most of her life, a single cat. We also have issues with what I would call well-meaning neighbors and even some dedicated colony caregivers who are simply providing too much food. They're free feeding, food is available all the time, and this can draw cats from nearby streets and neighborhoods who discover they can avoid competing for resources by moving over to the buffet a couple of blocks over. So all of this is to say we started a pilot program because there are a lot of cats in Tempe and the population is growing rapidly. On top of that, we started to hear that many of our neighborhoods were kind of at war with each other over this issue because of either a lack of information or incorrect information, and people were blaming each other for cat issues. And we all know what those issues are. No matter how much you love the kitties, they can be problematic for people hanging out in yards where they're not welcome, spraying and marking territory, having noisy and violent fights in the middle of the night, killing our local songbirds, using your flower bed as a litter box. The list goes on and on. So we have some folks in our neighborhoods who believe the cats are only there because someone is feeding them, which we know is not true. And if you were to stop feeding them, as some folks are quick to demand, spoiler alert, they will not leave. Cats are very territorial and they will stay. They'll just become more aggressive, getting into trash cans, pet food bowls, preying on more wildlife. They also roam more while looking for food. There we go. So let's address anybody who came here today to find out how to get rid of cats in their neighborhoods. Lots of cities have tried a lot of things over the years, and here's what we know never works: trapping and removing cats permanently. Again, they are territorial by nature, and many of these cats were born right there on your block and have literally never known anything else. Even if you had a place to take them, and by the way, there isn't one. There is no community that's actively recruiting feral cats, and there are no special farms you get to send them to. There's nowhere for them to go, and they are not adoptable when they are truly feral. But let's pretend that removing cats means something other than mass euthanasia of hundreds of cats. They would immediately start trying to find their way back home. And in the meantime, all of those cats in the surrounding blocks are going to spread out a little and claim what is now an uncontested territory. So you'll have new cats within a couple of weeks, and these will likely not be spayed and neutered. So removing cats through euthanasia or relocation still ends with you having a cat problem in your neighborhood. The other thing that doesn't work is making feeding of cats illegal. Generally, cat caregivers will keep feeding anyway. They'll just be sneakier about it. And it's virtually impossible to enforce. There is no law against outdoor cats, and how would we ever enforce one locally when they can walk across city and county boundaries at will? So how can you prove your neighbor isn't just feeding their own outdoor pet cat? And as I said before, even if you stop feeding them, they're not going to leave. They're just going to become more aggressive, more obnoxious, and cause more problems. So if there's one thing I want you to take away from this today, it's this. If you control the food, you control the cats. Everything else we do to manage their population is dependent on us having control of when and where they eat. Let's talk about what else doesn't work. Poor or incomplete colony management. And I would say that many of the most dedicated colony caregivers I know struggle with this on a daily basis. It's overwhelming to keep up. You put every penny you have into the best quality cat food you can afford, and then you do what you can to put a little money away for TNR. And even if you're lucky enough to get appointments for a couple of cats, by the time you get 2 cats done, 2 more are already pregnant or nursing kittens, and you literally cannot keep up with the pace. Free feeding is another common problem. And I get it. Some of you are caring for multiple colonies and it's all you can do to get some food out there every 24 hours. But we do know that leaving it out can draw pests, rodents, insects, things like that, wildlife, and even other nearby cats. And it can create a mess that makes your neighbors unhappy. And I will say unhappy neighbors have a tendency to steal your food bowls and throw them away, or complain to the HOA, or in some other way make it difficult to do what you're trying to do. So we should all be trying to avoid those confrontations whenever possible. Additionally, if you don't control the time of day that your colony eats, it can cause some struggles when trapping them for TNR. One of the most common reasons we can't catch cats is people free feeding and saying, well, I put the food out at 7 every night and sometime between then and morning they eat it. But sitting up all night to trap a cat who wanders in at 4 a.m. is not what most people are prepared to do. So we lose a lot of opportunities that way. Lone heroes are what I call those folks who are really trying to do this all alone. These are people foregoing their own food sometimes just to feed their colonies. They're people who can't ever have a sick day or go on vacation because someone needs to feed their cats. This is not something that you can do on your own for any length of time. And doing so often means cutting corners that lead to poor colony management and problems. Just as bad as struggling to do this alone is the problem that I call too many heroes. And this happens when multiple people are feeding or caring for a specific colony. This happens a lot of times with colonies that are in parks or other public spaces, as well as when people just live close by and they don't realize they're feeding the same cats multiple times a day. It can lead to chaos. It can lead to difficulty keeping track of your cats and how they're doing. It also means that it can be hard to get a cat into a trap when they know they can just go eat down the street without the risk. So if you came here today in hopes of eliminating cats from your neighborhood, I'm sorry to have to ruin your day, but there's really no realistic path to making that happen. Instead, we built our program around what science tells us works and on the goal of well-managed colonies. And this is one of my favorite quotes from the manager of PetSmart Charities, saying, when cat populations are present, the choice is not between having cats and not having cats. It's between having a managed colony and an unmanaged colony. So colony management is what we're trying to talk about. Okay, so what does work? Trap, neuter, return, TNR. This is what all the evidence shows us is most successful at keeping cat populations controlled, at minimizing their destructive behaviors, and at gradually reducing their size, either as they eventually get older and die off, or by identifying friendly cats and new kittens that can be pulled for rescue and made adoptable. If you can spay and neuter your entire colony, not only will the population not get any bigger, but they will, in essence, hold that territory, fending off any new cats, many of whom would likely be unneutered, who might try to come in and kind of jumpstart their own breeding program in your neighborhood. Also, the majority of the negative behaviors come from unneutered males who are roaming and fighting and looking for the ladies, marking their territory, and the majority of these behaviors will disappear when they are fixed. And as a bonus, fat, well-fed cats are far less likely to hunt, and definitely less likely to hunt birds, because birds are super hard to catch and well-fed cats are typically lazy. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about TNR in Tempe today. There's a lot of TNR going on in Tempe, lots of people feeding cats, trapping cats. So if TNR is the magical answer to our cat problems, how come it isn't working? Let's look at what's happening today without any intervention from the city. First, we already talked about the lone hero problem. Colony caregivers are often secretive and they don't generally tell a lot of people what they're doing, because when you draw attention to your cats, sometimes less cat-friendly neighbors do mean things to the cats or to your supplies. So they work alone in silence, and every one of them is doing enough work for a team of people all by themselves, which means they aren't always doing it very well or completely. Second, there are folks who have been faithfully feeding their colony for years and have watched it continue to grow because they have no idea how to do TNR. Or they know, but it's too much for them to do alone. Or they don't feel comfortable handling traps with potentially aggressive cats in them. Or they don't have an easy way to transport them or a safe place for them to recover. They just don't know where to start, and that's very common. Then there are those who would do more if they could. They just don't have the money to TNR all of their cats fast enough to avoid the next litter, so they're constantly playing catch up. Or they have cats that are difficult to trap and know where to go for help. Sometimes they just can't get an appointment for a time that they are available, or they called the TNR hotline a few times and never got a call back, so they gave up, or they got an appointment, but the cat didn't show up in the night they were trapping, so they missed their chance. For those who haven't experienced it, let me tell you how the TNR process goes right now for most of our caregivers in Tempe. So first you have to get an appointment, or multiple appointments if you have more cats to do. This typically requires calling the hotline run by the Animal Defense League of Arizona, or ADLA, and it can literally take weeks for someone to call you back, and then they might schedule you for a month or more out. Since the local Tempe TNR clinic has changed ownership, it's likely that your appointment will be in East Mesa or in Phoenix. And then a day or two before your appointment, you can drive all the way to the clinic, check out a trap from them, and bring it home. So if your cat is uncooperative and doesn't go in the trap, you won't be able to keep your appointment, and you start the scheduling process all over again. But let's say you're lucky and your cat goes right into the trap, then you need to bring it in somewhere safe and temperature controlled, depending on the time of year. So now you're carrying a trap full of scared, hissing, growling cat into your home or your garage overnight so that you can load it into your car in the morning and drive back to the clinic very early to drop it off for surgery. You'll then go back a third time later in the afternoon to pick up your cat after surgery and bring it home to recover indoors somewhere for a day or so before you then release it, scrub the dirty trap, and drive back to the clinic to return it. Nothing about that is easy or convenient, and it makes doing the volume of TNR that we really need to be doing next to impossible. So what can the city do to help? Our program is aiming to do 5 things. First and foremost, this is a community education program, but one that comes with a lot of hands-on learning and support from the city. Active community building within neighborhoods and within our citywide community of caregivers, and a whole lot of TNR, which will be geographically targeted. So we'll be working in entire neighborhoods at one time. First, we're going to educate everyone in your neighborhood about why and how we manage cat colonies effectively. We want our caregivers to have all the skills they need to make TNR easier and to manage cats in a way that doesn't cause problems for their neighbors. We're also going to educate those neighbors who are unhappy with cats on their properties on all the ways they can keep them away, while we also look at simple solutions that can help entice the cats away from places they're not welcome and into the places that they are. Second, you're going to have access to me as a support system when you run into problems or have questions. Difficult cat you can't trap, we'll troubleshoot it. Issues with the HOA, the city can come talk to them about why this is what we want you to do. New kittens that can be adopted, or a colony cat with medical issues, We'll help connect you to local resources and see if there's any help available. We're also going to buy our own traps, which is very exciting. So you can check them out from us and save yourself a couple of trips across the valley to the clinic to pick up or drop off theirs. And that means you can get them earlier. So some folks have cats that are a little trap savvy, or they're nervous about the traps, and it's very hard to get them to go in. So if you need a few days or more to train your cat to comfortably eat in the trap by putting it out and not setting it to go off and allowing them to eat regularly in the trap, you can do that. And that raises the odds of a successful trapping when you actually have an appointment scheduled. Third, we're going to help you build community around this issue. So within your neighborhoods, everyone benefits from your TNR work. So let's get everyone involved, whether it's helping build cat shade structures so they'll stop sleeping under another neighbor's car, or helping by buying a bag of food every once in a while, or just contributing a few dollars a month, or feeding your cats while you're out of town. The more people understand what we're doing, the more they'll be willing to help. So we want to make sure everybody understands the program. But I also want to build a community across the city among those caregivers who've been on their own for so long. So we created a private Facebook group just for people participating in the program. It's called City of Tempe Cat Colony Caregivers, which you can look up on Facebook. And I would encourage you all to go check it out and join. My hope is that it will be a place for caregivers to support each other, to share information, to share their tips and tricks, to help each other when needed, or just provide emotional support when they're frustrated. And of course, we're going to make TNR a lot easier for you. Not only are we going to have traps more readily available for you, including a drop trap if you need it, but we're working on a direct contract with a TNR provider so we can abandon the county hotline and have easier access to scheduling. For those of you who have been anxious about trying TNR on your own, we've got you covered too. Not only are you going to potentially have access to a whole community full of TNR experience to help you, but we'll be scheduling 4 mobile TNR events in the next year. And this is a great way to get your feet wet with TNR, as we provide a lot of support for those mobile events. We check out the traps to you locally in plenty of time to get your cats used to them. We will bring some local volunteers to help you with trapping and show you the ropes. We'll take all the cats with us that night and house them in our facility, and then monitor them the following night after surgery before giving them back to you the following day. So at our most recent events, we had a lot of people who participated in both clinics, and they needed 100% support in July, and then watched and learned and felt comfortable trapping on their own for August. So this is a hands-on learning opportunity that will make TNR as easy as possible for those who might be a little anxious about it. And one more thing I want to explain, and then I'll do my best to answer all of your questions. This is not just a program where you call me up with your 1 or 2 cats and the city just writes a check for your TNR. And I've had a lot of emails from folks who've said, hey, I've got 3 cats I need to do. Can you pay for it? Maybe, but we have very limited funding. And if we just did a cat here, a cat there, this neighborhood, that neighborhood, 1 here, 1 there, we'd really be in the same boat as the rest of you have been, trying to make an impact and having kittens born all around us while we're doing that. So we know we don't have enough money to TNR every cat in the city this year. And this is likely a 5-year project to really get our cat populations under control. So we really tried to think about how to get the most impact with the funding that we do have. And I believe that it's to target specific neighborhoods, working with all the caregivers at one time to get all of the cats done so that we know we've stopped the population growth in a particular territory. So we've actually divided the city into territories, and that's, you can see on the slide there, that's my little hand scribbled version of that. They're not divided specifically around neighborhood boundaries because not everyone in Tempe is within a defined neighborhood or association. Instead, we thought about the actual boundaries of most cat territories, which are major arterial streets and freeways that they won't cross. So using those boundaries, we've got 50 individual territories, which may contain 1 or more neighborhood associations or none at all, but are more likely to reflect the area in which colonies of cats will realistically travel. So here's how the plan for this will work. Someone contacts me for help with feral cats. We identify the territory that they live in, and then the city's going to send out a postcard to every house in that territory, letting them know about the program, asking them to contact us if they're feeding cats, if they're worried about cats, if they're in any way concerned about or dealing with cats. We want to know who they are. In the meantime, there will also be some work for you all to do. Talk to your neighbors, identify areas that you see a lot of cats, see if you can identify who's caring for them. We will have flyers you can drop off at people's doors if you don't want to talk to people face to face. And then we'll offer community education meetings in person or virtually, depending on the COVID situation. And we'll start helping people to manage their colonies more effectively. We encourage you to join the Facebook group and to start getting to know each other and how other people do what they do. The eventual goal is then to make sure we have identified every individual colony within your territory, if possible, and that we have the caregivers working with us utilizing best practices and that their cats are ready for TNR. So when we start making appointments for TNR with our contracted provider, we'll be scheduling you, or we'll be scheduling you for one of the mobile events, depending on timing. Everybody will be ready to go. We'll just keep going doing all of this until the money runs out. But I'll also be working to kind of spread the work out over the course of the year, as Lauren said, there's no dedicated staff for this program other than me. And this is something I do on top of my actual full-time job as a council aide for Councilmember Kuby and Garland. So I ask for your patience as we get this set up and running. And if you feel like you're stuck in holding for a bit, I'm sorry for that, but I promise we will be providing education and support for everyone who is actively organizing their neighborhood around this program. And if we do this right, we should be able to TNR about 800 cats this year and help several of those territories within the city shut down population growth entirely. And with that, both Lauren and I will be happy to take your questions on this or any other topic of interest to the city.
Yeah, I wanted to add that on Thursday, the council unanimously approved funding that will enable us actually to walk the talk as a city. When we create programs, it's important that we also follow the principles in cat colony management as well. And we haven't done that in the past. So our animal welfare working group is going to create the guidelines for the city facilities so we can have cat colony management at all the facilities. And believe you me, there are cat colonies at almost every facility that our city has. And what we also did was we committed to buying 100 traps, right?
We're buying 50 traps.
50, okay. Start with. And a sidelight is Fabric. It's the Fashion and Business Resource Innovation Center that has pivoted their whole business operation to creating personal protective equipment. They're taking the scraps left over from the hospital, the gowns that they're making, and they're creating all the cat covers for us. And it's this material that easily wipes off. It can be branded City of Tempe. It's like an amazing philanthropic gesture by Fabric. We're really grateful for their partnership. So it's exciting that the city approved the funds unanimously and that we're committed to this beyond just the pilot program, because we see that it works. And we're committed to really having impact on quality of life in Tempe, because we know this issue resounds to people. Kristen, how many calls do you field about this? And
oh gosh, dozens every week.
Exactly. So I see Miriam has her hand up. I don't know if she wants to type in the question or if you want to.
There's a couple of questions. Well, she has a few here. Okay, I'm going to go through the questions, Miriam, and if there's something I'm missing, then you can let me know. Are you going to talk about colonies and how to feed the masses of cats, because this gets expensive? At this point, we don't have funding to help with that. In my big picture dream down the road, I would love for this to become a more full-time city program with more grown-up funding. And if that happens, I would love to create like a caregiver certification program. And so for the folks who are doing it right and really doing that, I would love for us to be able to maybe buy food in bulk and sell it at cost or help out in some way with that. But that's probably a ways down the road before we can deal with that. What I would say is if you truly do organize your neighborhood and you convince a lot of folks about the good work that you're doing and how it's helping the neighborhood as a whole, you may find that there are neighbors who want to contribute a few dollars a month toward cat food, and you can fund some of your local efforts that way. But the city is probably a little ways away from being able to do that. Let's see what else we got here. Miriam is also asking about getting the free roaming law changed. As I said during the presentation, those would be local laws, and cats don't really respect city boundaries, so they just sort of wander wherever. And until we have the feral cat population under control, there's so many cats, it's impossible to know what's somebody's free roaming cat versus what's a feral, and it's really, really, really hard to enforce that. So it's a law that nobody's really interested in doing because we can't do it. We can tell people you can't have a free roaming cat, but then all anybody has to say is, well, that's a feral cat. That's not my cat. That cat just comes here and eats on my porch. I don't know that cat. So there's not really anything easy for us to do. Mariam also asked how soon we will have traps available. So the funding was approved on Thursday night, which means I am free to order. So however long it takes for them to get here, and however long it takes for fabric to make the trap covers, I expect to have them no later than the end of October available. And our next mobile TNR event, by the way, is scheduled for November 8th.
What about volunteers for the mobile events?
I'm sorry, what was that?
What about volunteering for the mobile events? Can you describe what that's like?
Yeah, so for folks who have experience trapping, we love having helpers. For those who don't, those first timers who are a little unsure about it and would like to have a more experienced eye there to help them sort that out. So there's a handful of folks who do TNR all over the valley who have come in the last couple of times to help us. But as we continue to educate people locally, or if there are some of you now that are more experienced in trapping, we'd love to have you, if you don't have trapping to do yourself that night, to come help some of your neighbors in surrounding communities to do that as well, so that people aren't out there on their own trying to figure it out.
Or you can do cat surveillance like I did. I was outside someone's house. I was arousing the suspicion of the neighbors because I was sitting in my car with my phone with the light on in the car, and I was just waiting for a certain cat to be trapped. Yeah, a neutered cat got in the trap, but yeah, there could always be that kind of involvement as well. And then I know, Kristen, you spent the night of that neutering program, the night before the mobile neutering and spaying, you were driving all over Tempe collecting cats and traps, and people could bring the collected cats to the facility that we have. That's an awesome.
Yeah, we try to offer transport and make it as easy as possible. The other thing that's nice about us doing this within a city facility is that we have the ability to allow people to trap 2 nights in a row. So they had 2 chances to trap their cats. So if they caught them on the first night, we could still keep them in the building and feed them and water them and do all the things that you do. They just stayed with us an extra 24 hours. And a lot of folks struggle to do that in their homes. So it allows us to start trapping a little bit earlier, and we have better luck that way. Karen Apple wants to know, how can residents donate money to this program? So I'm working with our budget office about this. They said it is possible for people to donate money directly to the city. It's just a little complicated because we don't have an easy way set up for that. It's usually sort of these large philanthropic things. So if you want to give us, $25 or $50, it's harder to do that, but you can. You can send us a check. We are working on a new outlet for, I think, water bills and various things like that. It's going to be an online payment system that will have an opportunity to set up recurring monthly payments, but it looks like that's not going to roll out until sometime in 2021. So stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, we can take donations. It's just a little more complicated to get it to us. Lauren's asking basically the same question. Is there a place for donations for Tempe only instead of Adler or Altered Tales? Yes, you can give it to us. And I will get more detail out and I'll post it in the Facebook group and stuff about how people can send us money if they want to. Good, thanks. Medical resources for existing colonies. Are there any resources for that in Tempe that are affordable, or would that be the long-term goal? It's not something that's a part of our program currently, but we are aware that sometimes colony cats have medical issues and we know that you all care about these cats that you take care of. So there are some rescues who will sometimes help out with things like that. Again, if we can set up some of these neighborhood-specific funds where folks throw $5 or $10 a month in there, not only is it helping us buy food, but it could create a fund that could deal with medical issues. The difficulty about medical issues in feral cats is anything that's serious enough that it's going to need follow-up care gets a little dodgy. We have cats that can't easily be handled. But there's a lot of very simple things. They get in little fights with each other. They get little cuts and scrapes and abscesses, and those things can relatively easily be fixed. But it does take money. So at this point, that's not a part of our program, but I'm happy to help encourage folks in your neighborhood, to understand why creating some sort of a local fund would help in that area. Karen Apple also wants to know, how do I find out if there are any colony managers in the lakes area? I know of at least one. I'm sure there are more. So when we start tackling these areas that we haven't really been in yet, as I said, the first thing that we're going to do is send out a little postcard that lets everybody know that the program is happening, that asks for colony caregivers to reach out to us and identify themselves, and also asks folks who are struggling with cat issues or angry about cat issues, because that's sort of the other side of this coin is we're going to have a lot easier time doing the work that needs to be done if we help solve the problem for the folks that are not enjoying their life with cats. So yes, that is what we would do. And I also hope that there will be folks who will join the Facebook group who will identify where they're from. And that'll be a way to meet people as well. Mario wants to know if TCC could help for this. Possibly. That has been discussed in the past. It's just more complicated than for it to, the way that our budgeting works, for it to come in through TCC and then make its way to a completely different account for it to be spent out of. But I can certainly follow up on that question.
Kristen, what about Altered Tales? Can they create a Tempe specific fund? So if someone donates and they say they want to go to Tempe, they could have it be tax deductible?
They might, but we are mostly dealing with them on sort of a monthly billing basis, keeping everything in-house. So I don't know if that's something that they would want to do or not. We'd have to talk to them about it.
Sure.
Beth says there's a lot of background noise. I don't know if that's me or you, Lauren, but apparently one of us has a lot of background noise. I don't hear it, but that may be the case. Sorry, Beth. Any other questions that anybody might have? I'm excited to get started. Heavy breathing from somewhere. Awesome. Okay, well that's it for me then. I have a couple more cat related questions. Shruti had some questions. She was part of our pilot program in Pepperwood, so hello. Asking if a discount program can be set up with local businesses for pet food and other supplies for feral cats, and similarly maybe some sort of a discount program with a local veterinarian. Those are great ideas. I'm happy to ask those questions. I think a lot of it is going to depend on how many neighborhoods are involved, and if they know that there's a lot of folks who are going to be coming in sort of making a bulk discount worth it, then that may be more likely to happen. But I'm happy to reach out to some local folks and ask the question. Also, somebody wants to know, Carrie wants to know, why can't we trap unwanted smaller colonies and take them to an organization to have them put down if they are indeed feral? My neighborhood trapped 35 and took the majority into the Humane Society and dropped off without charge. Now I think it's $60 a cat. Well, I think you just answered your own question. It's incredibly expensive. It's more than twice as expensive as spaying and neutering the cats. And you know, for the most part, there's not a lot of support for mass euthanasia programs. And as I said earlier in the presentation, if you completely clear an area of cats, likely you will have cats back within a couple of weeks, because you know, it's science, right? Coming from an area of higher concentration to lower concentration. If you have a neighborhood with 50 cats and then this one has 20, and you take those 20 away, these 50 are going to spread out and give themselves more room within that territory. So removal really has never been successful in any city that's tried it, not in any kind of long-term way, unfortunately. He says they did not have that issue. Well, you're lucky, but the vast majority of places do. Anybody else have questions?
I just want to mention that, you know, ultimately, in pre-COVID times, we were talking about creating an animal welfare staff person for the city of Tempe. I think the only city in the U.S. that has such a position is New York City, and was created about a year ago. I think we could contribute a lot to quality of life in our city by having one person in the city who has that task, that assignment. And in the same way that we have an urban forester focused on the health of our trees, to have one person in the city who we could go to for the health of our pets and our animals and our wildlife as well. Unfortunately, we were talking to a philanthropic organization, but COVID really stopped everybody in their tracks, and it's hard to get support for that. But that's our ultimate goal. We hope to create an animal welfare position within the city of Tempe that can help with so many issues in a full-time basis. So with that, I will say goodbye, and I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Thank you to Kristen for your presentation. Is there another question?
No, I was just going to say, I want to remind people about the Facebook group, which is now up and running. So it's City of Tempe Cat Colony Caregivers. Please go join the Facebook group if you want to continue to talk about the feral cat program. Please, if you know other caregivers in Tempe, invite them to join as well. We also recorded this session today, so I will try to get that link available as soon as possible for folks who missed it, who want to hear the cat presentation. All of that will be available soon, and watch Lauren's social media for information on how to access that.
Thank you. If you guys ever have questions about anything related to the city of Tempe, you can email me at lauren_Kuby@tempe.gov. My phone number is 602-790-2156. I'm always able to talk until like 10 o'clock at night. Even John, but don't tell my husband that. He gets annoyed with all the phone calls, but I don't, because that's the best time of being a council member, is when I actually talk to people who are engaged and also impacted by the decisions we make. So please reach out anytime, and we'll get answers to your questions. And to me, the best ideas, they come from our citizens, our residents. So thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to connecting with Kuby at the end of October. We'll say goodbye. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.